Welcome to Sex Ed with DB. I'm your host, DB. Let's get into it. Let me tell you about the most fun homework assignment I have ever given. Daily Magic Wand Time. It started with me doing a 21-day experiment to answer one question. What happens to stress, sleep, mood, and sexual satisfaction when I use the magic wand every day, versus when I have partnered sex, versus when I have no sexual activity at all? The results were honestly so fascinating that we turned it into a full-blown scientific study with over 1,000 participants. Now we have real data on how consistent solo pleasure can impact mental health and overall wellness, not just orgasms. Curious? Go to magicwandstudy.com and read what we found out. I've been a sex educator for almost a decade, so I know lots about sexy products. Let me share my top 3 reasons I'm personally obsessed with Uberlube. 1, sex feels better while using it, period. 2, it's great for sensitive skin and it's recommended by leading doctors. 3, I don't need to reapply it often because a little goes a long way. Go to uberlube.com and use code SEXEDWITHDB for 10% off at checkout. If you've ever thought, I kind of want to try a suction toy, but I have no idea where to start. Hi, this is for you. Lem from Nancy is the perfect first step. It's designed to feel safe, simple, and actually enjoyable to use. No confusion, no intimidation. You can start slow, explore what feels good, and stay in control the whole time. And because it's small, quiet, and super discreet, it literally looks like a lemon, it doesn't feel like this big, overwhelming thing. It just feels fun. So if you've been curious but hesitant, this is your sign. Go to hellonancy.com and use code SEXEDWITHDB for 25% off. Okay, real talk. If your vagina feels off, like recurring itchiness or odor, that's your microbiome trying to get your attention. Your vaginal health is all about balance, and when that balance gets disrupted, that's when things like yeast infections or BV can show up. The Happy V prebiotic and probiotic is designed to support a healthy vaginal microbiome and maintain an optimal pH with 7 clinically studied probiotic strains at their clinically effective dosages. If you're ready for the relief you've been looking for, head to happyv.com and use code SEXEDWITHDB for 15% off your first order. That's happyv.com. Happy V as in vagina.com. Hello, and welcome back to Sex Ed with DB. I'm DB, your favorite sex educator and pleasure expert. And today we're unpacking a question that I personally have thought about many times. I'm a human. What do you want from me? Despite being a seasoned sex educator, here is the question. Why do I fantasize about things I would never want in real life? And thank you to this brave listener, anonymous listener, for writing in. If you want to share your anonymous question, the link is in the show notes for you. Here are some follow-up questions that are similar to this question that are a little bit more specific that may feel super relevant to you. Why do I fantasize about being dominated when I'm actually very independent? Why do I fantasize about public sex when I would be absolutely mortified if someone actually saw me? Why do I fantasize about cheating even though I deeply love my partner and am committed to them? Why do I fantasize about rough sex, power dynamics, or even non-consent themes that I would never want in reality? Your sexual fantasies are often less about real-life desires and more about how your brain processes novelty, emotion, risk, control, anticipation, and meaning. And today we're talking about neuroscience, psychology, what's taboo, dopamine, arousal, and why your horny brain is kind of a strange storyteller. So let's start with your sexual brain being different than your everyday brain. Let's talk about the dual control model from the Dr. Emily Nagoski, author of Come As You Are. We've talked about this model multiple times, but if this is the first time you're hearing us talk about it, there are 2 things that are key to this model. The accelerator, the things that turn us on, and the brakes, the things that inhibit arousal. In our fantasies, there are no consequences. There's no danger in real life. There's no STI risk, no relationship fallout. And here's the key to that. complete control. You get complete control in your fantasies, right? And your brain gets all of the dopamine and none of the issues. Now, erotic fantasy activates the reward motivation systems without requiring real world action. So, for example, you can fantasize about sex in a crowded room without actually wanting to risk public indecency charges, right? So that's a big reason why fantasies let us engage in that accelerator and not the brake, because there's actually no consequences that can happen from us thinking about stuff in actual real life. So, what happens in the brain during a fantasy? Dopamine spikes when there is anticipation, novelty, and pursuit. And your erotic brain really loves those things. Novelty, unpredictability, anticipation, tension, forbiddenness, right? And an important nuance here is that dopamine is less of the brain's pleasure chemical and more the neurotransmitter involved in motivation, anticipation, reward seeking. And it helps drive the feeling of wanting something, again, especially when it feels surprising or uncertain. And this explains why taboo feels erotic, because if we're unsure about something or it feels new or strange to us, that can feel really good and kind of increase that dopamine and that motivation. Also, the prefrontal cortex of your brain calms down. The part of the brain that's responsible for judgment and logic and self-consciousness can really quiet during arousal. So your horny brain is not always your daytime brain. It's letting loose. It's saying, I'm letting myself experience, in my head at least, these things that are new. And so my dopamine's increasing, my prefrontal cortex is calming down. So I'm just able to engage in that arousal and engage in what feels novel and exciting to me. Also, fantasy activates our emotional networks. It activates memory and emotion and imagination and symbolism. So fantasies are often emotionally coded in our brains rather than literal, rather than us knowing that it's going to happen in real life, since it's just happening up here. And I'm pointing to my head in our brains. Why are certain fantasies so common, even if we're not interested in doing them in real life? Like, why are we thinking about these things? And why do they turn us on? So a lot of fantasies are less about the actual act, and again, more about the psychological experience underneath it, that emotion or symbolism. So I want to break some common ones down. Let's talk about DNS, dominance and submission fantasies. This is a really big one that people have. People often are worried, like, oh no, I fantasize about being dominated. Does this mean I secretly want to be controlled by someone? And probably not. For many people, submission fantasies are actually about relief. Let me explain. If you are someone, maybe this is you, shout it out if this is you. If you're highly responsible, if you are constantly making decisions, if you are caregiving for others, you're managing work stress, or you're just emotionally carrying a lot, sometimes surrendering feels really erotic because your brain is craving a break. And we actually talk about this a lot with Lena Dune in the pleasure in subbing episode. And so we'll link that in the show notes in case you're interested in hearing a little bit more about that. If that resonates with you, definitely check that episode out. So you might be thinking, like, can somebody else just be in charge for like just 5 minutes, right? This isn't a weakness. It's especially in healthy kink dynamics, it is deeply consensual and negotiated and trust-based, right? And it just means that you're wanting someone else to take the reins. And so again, offering that, or it could mean that at least, everyone is different, but that can definitely be a part of it. For people who want to relegate control to their partner, that definitely could be because you're needing a break. Now, on the flip side, people who fantasize about dominance are not necessarily controlling or aggressive people. Sometimes dominance fantasies are about feeling confident, being desired, leadership, attunement, creating intensity for someone else. And for many people, it's not that they want power over someone. It's that they want to feel like they are creating an experience and they want to feel sexually confident. Now let's transition to cheating fantasies, because this one makes people fucking panic. And they're thinking, oh my God, I fantasize about someone else. Does this mean my relationship is doomed? Probably not necessarily. For many people, cheating fantasies are not about actual betrayal, it's about novelty. If you remember what we said about dopamine, novelty can feel erotic and can increase that dopamine, that motivation and reward-seeking hormone. And especially in long-term relationships where things may feel more familiar, sometimes cheating fantasies can be about feeling wanted, being pursued, sexual excitement, attention, or remembering what it feels like to feel wildly desired. Your brain may be fantasizing about newness. It's not necessarily a new partner, but many people in happy relationships fantasize outside their relationship. Fantasy can exist without threatening commitment. And having a thought about someone else is not cheating. I repeat, for the anxious attachers in the back, having a fantasy about someone else is not cheating. Now let's talk about public sex fantasies, because this one is also incredibly common. For many people, public sex fantasies are about risk, adrenaline, adventure, spontaneity, breaking the rules. The possibility of being seen can create that tension and anticipation, which some brains find wildly erotic. But in real life, a lot of people who fantasize about public sex would absolutely hate doing it, because real life would include possible legal consequences, uncomfortable surfaces, anxiety, strange feelings if someone actually did see you. What if it was a creep that saw you, right? But fantasizing about like the perfect forest where you're doing it in and there's outdoor showers and, crazy fun fantasies, that edits out the logistics and the fear. So that could be why that is interesting to you. Now, lastly, I want to talk about consensual non-consent or coercion fantasies, because this is one that often a lot of people are afraid to admit, but fantasies that involve force or powerlessness or non-consent themes are perfectly fine. Even though this is where people feel a lot of shame, research suggests that these fantasies are actually relatively common. And again, it's okay. Having these fantasies does not mean that you want real life assault. For many people, these fantasies are not about violence. It can be about intensity. They want to feel maybe overwhelmingly desired or letting go of responsibility, not having to initiate or surrendering control in a way that feels very emotionally charged. And fantasy can only happen in a context where your brain knows, I am safe. This is so critical. Fantasy, let me say that again. Fantasy can only happen in a context where your brain knows, I am safe. There's this invisible layer of consent built into the imagined experience, even if there's CNC, right? For some people, consensual exploration of power dynamics through kink or CNC, consensual non-consent, can feel exciting and pleasurable, but the key word there is consensual, because consent is what makes the difference between erotic play and real-world harm. And for many people, this stays a fantasy. You don't have to act out anything in real life that you are envisioning that turns you on. That's totally normal. Sometimes it's just your brain experimenting with emotion and symbolism, intensity in a safe imaginary environment, and that's where it can live. Now let's talk about arousal non-concordance, because this is the science piece that actually is surprising to people. So your body, fantasy, values, and desires do not always line up. Often they don't. And, some people can be physically aroused by scary things or unwanted thoughts or something that's really surprising or strange to you, but it doesn't mean that you actually want them in real life. Arousal is not consent. Bodies can respond automatically. So, instead of asking yourself, why are my fantasies so strange and what's wrong with me? A better reflection question could actually be, what feeling is this fantasy creating for me? Do I feel free, safe, wanted, powerful, released from everyday pressures? Because maybe the takeaway isn't, I need to do this fantasy in real life. Maybe it's just, I want more novelty in my sex life, or I'm stressed and craving surrender, or I miss feeling desired and chosen. So the key takeaway here is that it's perfectly okay to fantasize about things that you're not going to be wanting in everyday life. Your fantasy life is not a moral test of who you are, or it's not strange. Like, I talk about this all the time, but we've had Rachel Felton on the podcast before, and we talked about, arousing history of sex, and like been there, done. It's literally called been there, done that, arousing history of sex. And like most people have someone has thought of your fantasy before. So like know that you are normal, know that it is perfectly fine to have them, and know that it's okay to not do it in real life. Your brain really likes novelty and symbolism and emotion and risk and storytelling, and being turned on by something doesn't actually mean that you want it in real life, that you'd enjoy it in real life, or that it reflects your values. Sexuality is weird, and your erotic brain is often more metaphorical than it is literal. So if this helped you, if this is interesting to you, please share it with a friend, share it with a buddy. And now's a great time to share. If you haven't rated and reviewed the pod yet, what are you doing? Pause this right now. Go rate and review the pod. Share something new that you learned in today's episode. It really, really helps us get to new ears and find new people who enjoy learning about sex. Thank you so much for listening. Love y'all. Talk to you next week.